Chapter 9. The rain came down in relentless sheets, drenching the city of Mumbai in a melancholy haze. It blurred the skyline, turned roads into rivers, and soaked through Aditya's suit as he stood motionless on the rooftop of Singhania Towers. He didn't care. He barely noticed. The cold sting of water against his skin was nothing compared to the emptiness hollowing him out from the inside. Naina was gone. He had lost her. For the past week, he had moved through his days in a haze, his once pristine life unraveling at the edges. Meetings blurred into one another, contracts went unsigned, and for the first time in years, his work felt meaningless. His mind was trapped in an endless loop of memories. Her laughter, her defiance, the way she had looked at him before she walked away. But worst of all was the realization that she had been right. He had justified his past decisions for so long that he had stopped questioning them. He had told himself that the Kapoor land deal was just business, that he had done what was necessary. But that excuse felt hollow now, because it had cost him something far greater than money or power. It had cost him her. The sound of the rooftop door opening snapped him out of his thoughts. Aditya. Priya's voice cut through the rain, laced with concern. His sister approached cautiously, holding an umbrella over her head. "What the hell are you doing up here? You'll catch pneumonia." He let out a humorless chuckle. "Wouldn't that be fitting?" Priya sighed and stepped closer. "I've been trying to reach you for days. You're shutting everyone out." He didn't respond. She hesitated before continuing. "Naina left this morning. Her flight to Paris took off at dawn." His stomach clenched. He had known it was coming, but hearing it out loud made it real. She was really gone. Priya studied him for a moment. "You love her, don't you?" Aditya exhaled, running a hand through his wet hair. "What does it matter?" "It matters if you're willing to fight for her," she said softly. He let out a bitter laugh. "And say what? That I'm sorry? That I didn't mean to ruin her father's life?" He shook his head. "She deserves better than a man who only realized the weight of his actions when it was too late." Priya was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "So fix it." He frowned. "What? You can't change the past, Aditya, but you can change what happens next," she said, her eyes fierce. "You've spent your whole life trying to live up to Dad's expectations. Maybe it's time to stop being his version of Aditya Singhania and start being your own." Her words hit harder than he expected. For so long, he had been running the family empire the way his father had dictated, ruthlessly, efficiently, without emotion. But what had it left him with? A fractured relationship with his own family, a reputation built on power instead of respect. And now, the loss of the one person who had seen him beyond the Singhania name. Maybe Priya was right. Maybe it wasn't too late to change. For the first time in years, he wanted to be better. Not for his father. Not for his company. For himself. For Naina. Thousands of miles away, in the heart of Paris, Naina stood in the middle of a grand dance studio, surrounded by walls of mirrors reflecting a version of herself she no longer recognized. She should have been happy. This was everything she had worked for. An opportunity to teach at the prestigious Avery School of Performing Arts, to be surrounded by some of the world's finest dancers, to build a future without compromise. And yet, every step she took in this new life felt hollow. She had been in Paris for a month now. On the surface, she was thriving. Her students adored her. Her classes were gaining attention, and offers for international collaborations were pouring in. But beneath it all, there was an ache she couldn't shake. She missed Mumbai. She missed him. At night, when the city was quiet, she would close her eyes and find herself back in the rehearsal hall, feeling his gaze on her as she moved. She would remember the rooftop dance, the warmth of his hand against hers, the way his voice had softened when he spoke to her. She hated herself for missing him, but what she hated more was the truth buried beneath her anger. She had fallen in love with Aditya Singhania, and despite everything, she didn't know how to stop. Back in Mumbai, Aditya took his first step toward redemption. He started with the one thing he had avoided for years, his father. The confrontation was long overdue. He walked into his father's grand office at Singhania Industries, where the elder Singhania sat behind an imposing desk, as sharp and severe as ever. "I need to talk to you," Aditya said. His father barely looked up. "If it's about the Paris deal, I've already signed off." It's not about business. That got his attention. His father studied him, frowning. Then what is it? Aditya took a steady breath. I'm changing the way we do things. His father's brows furrowed. What are you talking about? I'm talking about how we handle business, Aditya said, his voice unwavering. No more ruthless takeovers. No more destroying small businesses for profit. We have enough wealth and power. It's time we earned respect instead of forcing it. His father scoffed. You sound naive. No, Aditya said, meeting his gaze. I sound like a man who finally understands what matters. His father exhaled sharply. And what brought on this sudden change? Aditya thought of Naina. Of everything he had lost. Someone showed me what it means to stand for something. His father was silent for a long moment. Then, with a shake of his head, he said, You're making a mistake. Aditya smiled faintly. Then it's mine to make. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving behind the version of himself he no longer wanted to be. A week later, he did something even more unexpected. He found Naina's mother. It had taken some effort, but he had located her at the small temple she visited every morning. She was startled to see him, but he bowed respectfully before speaking. I know I can't undo what my family did, he said, but I want to make things right. I've set up a trust in your husband's name to support independent artists and struggling schools like Naina's. It's the least I can do. Naina's mother studied him carefully. And why should I believe you? Aditya met her gaze. Because she changed me. Something in his voice must have convinced her because after a long pause she nodded. Then let's see if you mean it. In Paris, as Naina finished another rehearsal, she found herself lingering at the window, staring out at the city. A soft knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. Mira's voice came from the other side. Naina, you should see this. Frowning, she opened the door. Mira handed her a tablet, the screen glowing with a news article. Naina's breath caught. Aditya Singhania announces major reforms in Singhania Industries. She scrolled further. New trust fund to support independent artists, including former Kapoor-owned land restoration project. Her heart pounded. She read his name over and over, trying to understand what it meant. Aditya was changing. For himself. For her. And suddenly, for the first time in weeks, she wasn't so sure she was ready to let go.